Good evening. This is Carla from Rehan Allahwala's World of Connections. And I am here today to talk to Faisal Sarwar from Lahore, Pakistan about his life, his work, and his passions. And we're going to find out all about him. And before I forget, I want to remind you that this show, like all of my shows, is sponsored by Rehan, by the Institute of Peace, promoting peace one conversation at a time. Faisal, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Carla. Glad to be with you here on your show. My name is Faisal Sarwar. I am from Lahore, Pakistan, but originally from the northern part of Pakistan, which is an autonomous region known as Kashmir. So I was born in a village, spent some of my childhood there, and then I came to Lahore. I was brought up here in Lahore, got my education here, and I have a background which is kind of various. I have worked on capacity building projects. I have worked on some outsourced BPO projects. And I currently, for the last 7, 8 years, I have been focusing more on promoting sustainable living and ideas which are kind of off grid and those ideas which allow an individual to live a sustainable, complete, full life without having to engage him or herself to a job or a business. So I promote sustainability and I try to work on those kind of projects.
Okay. What made you get interested in doing this type of work?
Carla, I would mention two important things which might have put me on this path. One of them was back in 2005, there was a massive earthquake in some parts, northern parts of Pakistan and Kashmir. And there was a huge death toll, about 80,000 people or more died in that. And many more were displaced. There was a huge catastrophe because all the houses there were demolished and it was sort of an emergency. So I was not aware of that for the first 6, 7 days. There was not much news in Pakistan about that. And when we found out, I went to Kashmir for some initial relief and rescue work. Over there, I came across an NGO called Save the Children. It's a huge NGO. And I got a chance to initially distribute a huge quantity of relief and other items like food in the area initially. I got a chance to hire more people. And for about 3 months, I was mostly busy with food distribution and distribution of important things at that time. It was winter time, so we had to give them blankets and other kind of things which were important at that time. Afterwards, I got introduced to another NGO. I wasn't, to be honest, very aware of the scale at which Save the Children works. So there was some temporary hiccup or halt to their work, and I switched the NGO, went to ARC, American Refugee Committee. With them, I secured a project with the World Food Program, managed to distribute about 4,000 tons of food for a few months, collected a lot of data in the area. And then we engaged in a 8,000 shelters, temporary shelters construction project. So at that time, the experience was rich, and it was a very different life opposed to what we were experiencing before, because everyone had come to a point where a day before they were rich, they were thriving, but just a day later, they had nothing. All of their houses was rubble. So I got a chance to watch life up close and saw the human spirit, how people would rebuild and how they would resume their life and how they would start doing the same things, their spirit, all of that. So this was one chance when a lot of NGOs were there and they were trying to promote other kind of um, projects which were useful for employing people and helping people. So I got introduced to a lot of ideas, and I got this initiation into this NGO sector. Afterwards, for spending about 1.5 years there in these projects, I resumed some work back in the BPO industry, and I realized a lot of people, a lot of young guys were working night shifts for companies, corporations in US, and that was because they were working night shifts, long hours. It was kind of depressing for me, that experience, even though I hired a lot of people. But when I saw them working against nature and depending on the job for paying their bills and their normal needs, I kind of got introduced to the concept or started looking for ideas which would liberate people. So in the process, then I found out more about alternative energies, and I found out about alternative construction. I found out about other ideas which people can adopt and become self-sufficient. And again, I saw this from my childhood because I was born in a place which was scenic, which was natural. There was pine forest all around on the hills around me. There were streams and everything. But I saw with the growing population, saw deforestation. I saw the landscape changing and all of that, which had a profound impact on my life and outlook. So I wanted to revert that change back to default, back to how it was. And comparing the life that we live in cities, busy cities, the city where I live, Lahore, is about uh, 20 million people. So it's a very congested, cramped place. And when I compare that to the life that I originally had when I was young back there in the village, I would like these people to experience that. So I would want to promote sustainable living. A huge part of Pakistan um, is arid and is not developed. So I would like to see that as a green part of the world. So I work on ideas and promote ideas which take us back to nature and build a green, sustainable, self-sufficient economy.
Wow. Now, did you grow up in Kashmir, or did you grow up in Lahore?
Uh, until I was 10 or 12, most of my years were in Kashmir. Afterwards, we used to come here for part of the year, and we used to extend our summer vacations to like 4 or 5 months. So I would go back to my native village and spend a lot of time there until I was 17 or 18.
Why did your parents, and you may not want to answer this, but why did your parents move from such a beautiful, lush area to Lahore?
In villages or in places like those, there used to be lesser opportunities for education. Some of the infrastructure was not there. So they wanted us to be more educated. He had a job here in a bank in Lahore. So we were kind of in this need to move to Lahore and spend more time here. But my heart was always back in the flowing streams and the pine forest and the animals that I used to see there and all that life.
What kind of animals did you have there?
There were local animals. There's a huge diversity of birds. I don't even know what they're called because majority of them I've not seen them elsewhere, or I don't know their English names. But there was a huge diversity of birds, mostly of insects that I'm sure many of them are not even named. And there were some animals like porcupines, hedgehogs, rabbits, deer, peacocks. quails. So there was a diversity in the pine forest around my house. It was surrounded by pine forest on all four sides.
So you had a love for animals. Did you have any pets?
My pet used to be our buffaloes and our goats,
But they didn't come into the house, I hope.
but they were part of the house, like family members.
Did they actually wander into the house?
Goats would do that, chicken would do that, but buffaloes were usually, and at that time, every house used to have one extra hall for housing these buffaloes or cows. And sometimes when after the harvest, when we didn't have crops in the field, they would let them loose, unleash them, and then they would roam around in the house as well as in the adjacent fields.
So you actually had a buffalo come into the house? Did I hear you say that?
Literally, my grandmother, this buffalo, our buffalo used to go roam around in the fields. And at one point when you can't even see the buffalo, my grandma used to call her and she would come running like a goat or like a dog to her. And
You're kidding.
literally, yes.
Do you have pictures of that?
No, we didn't have cameras at that time. If anybody had a camera, only a few people would have that. So they were not common in the village at that time. But I might be able to find some pictures of us with the pets in my childhood. I'm not too sure though.
Are you the oldest child or?
Yes, I am. I was the oldest of my other four siblings.
Wow. And do you still live in a joint family or?
Yes, it's an extended family. I have three children. My two brothers live with me. They're not married yet. And my mother is with me. Some of my cousins who work in this city, they live with me. And back in village, we again have this kind of an extended family. So that's how we were brought up. That's what we like.
That's so cool. I don't know if I could possibly live with all those people in a house, but wow.
Well, back in the village, I discovered at that time, you could barely tell if the family was like what we found out later on when we came to city, that your family would normally be you, your wife, and your children. That was not the concept back in the village. The whole village was your family, and everybody was. I mean, you could not distinguish. Everybody was part of the family. Everybody would spend all the time with each other. We would have these gatherings under these huge trees where everybody would be sitting most part of the day. And over there, it's still sort of a tribal culture. It's transforming into an urban sort of living now, but at that time it used to be a very tribe oriented or tribal sort of a community, and the concept of family was of course a very big family where everybody was part of it.
Now, were your parents also into helping people like you are now? Where did
Actually, that my grandfather used to be a very strange individual. Maybe that might have caused some of this. Subconsciously, he might have affected this because he was the go-to person in the entire village. He was the handyman of the village. Everything that needed to be done, because livestock was very important at that time for people's survival. They would get most of their food from their animal. There was no supply chain, no trucks used to go there with milk and everything else. So in order to handle their livestock, everything, all the tools that they needed, the ropes that they needed, he would actually use hemp fiber to weave these ropes. And with these ropes, he used to create things which were needed to handle this livestock. He used to create these beds, which were our local beds, which were woven and wood was used in them. They're very crafty. He used to do it for the entire village. People used to have houses made of rock, and then they would use mud with that. So he would build those for them, a range of things, and he would not charge a penny to anybody. It was like a free thing. Anybody could come to our house, ask for the service. He would work 24/7. He was very strange in a way that he didn't used to sleep at night. He would only take a 15-minute nap while sitting, and continuously he was working for these things for everybody else in the village, and he would not charge them a penny for all of that. So he was kind of a role model for me.
How could he afford to do that?
You see, when you have some buffaloes, some cows, which would give you enough milk, you could get your fats from it. You have a couple of fields from where you would get enough grains for the year. You have some forest around you from where you could collect the wood, and some of the other things which were needed, you could get from a nearby shop, which was not much. There wasn't much which was needed. Most of the things were taken care of. Like one family member, if one family member would be working in the city and sending some money back home, that would be enough to take care of any other needs. Most of our needs were met from the local produce that we had.
So you had local produce. Did you kind of swap? Like someone would have carrots and another person would have tomatoes, and you would share the food? Or
Maybe 15 years before me, there used to be this barter shop in the village where people would trade their cotton with the grains. But by the time I was young, 10 years old, there were a few shops in the village where people would go with money. So my mother tells me that when she was younger, she used to buy stuff with exchange of other goods that they had.
wow. Now, this is interesting because people are not growing up now needing to, feeling a need to do service. You're very much into service. Was that something very big in your family?
At that time, because I only have these memories of other people doing the same thing back in those days, and when I recall, I find those days to be the most joyous and wonderful part of my life, the best memories. So I kind of idealized that life once again. People didn't used to be stressed out. They used to be very relaxed, very generous. I guess the kind of lifestyle that we have now, that has locked a lot of our features, those features of generosity and caring and spending time with others. And most of those beautiful human features have been locked, I think, because of the lifestyle, the lifestyle people have in cities. So I hope to restore it.
Now you go back to the country often. Do you see that feeling of serving and wanting to help still prevalent in the village?
If I compare people from the village to the people living in city, of course, it's still very prevalent and very prominent. But when I compare it with the previous generation, those times, I guess some change has occurred because of this urbanization.
How would you like to see that changed? And how do you think it would be changed most effectively?
I would hope that, because most of the people are congested or crammed in small parts of the land of the whole country, they are in the city. So I would like them to learn life skills with the available technologies that we have now, like solar and other alternative energy solutions, with so many small machines, so many DIY things, they're able to spread out and restore environment around them. Um, they can work on making the land fertile. They can live in countryside. They can create forests around them. So I hope that people spread out rather than this urbanization trend. I would like people to go back to scattered parts of the country and live a more sustainable, comfortable life where they are the masters of their fate and they have everything in their own hand instead of depending on the variables of the modern economy.
Now, I agree with you about that, but I don't know how likely that will happen. Do you have any ideas of how we could develop this in the cities also? So there, both types of lifestyle are going hand in hand.
For the cities, I dream of a world where we can develop gardens in the city. Over here, we have kind of a construction where the roofs are made of concrete and steel, so they're strong enough to support a rooftop garden. I worked on that idea. We could do vertical gardening. We could do mushrooms. We could do some micro farms in the backyard. We there's still a chance that if we deploy these things, we can still have some very green cities. If we switch to electric vehicles sooner than later, we'll have these kind of cities where you can see some nature, you can see some greenery. They're cooled off and they're better living places compared to what they are right now.
Okay, so I agree with you. I'm not arguing with you. I just want to know, how can we develop this in the cities? Do you have any ideas of how it should be developed?
Yes, Carla, in the cities, as I mentioned, it varies from cities to cities. Where in US over there, you guys normally have big backyards, but the roof, I believe, is not mostly suitable for having a complete rooftop garden where you'd have soil on top of the roof. But over here, every single house in my city, it's concrete. So we can very easily, we'll have to use some technology, which is there are some petrochemicals that are sprayed on the roof. Then there are some other petroleum products which are used as layers to hold some water, retain some water on the roof. There are some gutters installed. On top of that, some geotextile is used. Then there is then there's another layer of PVC or plastic petroleum material. So with a combination of 3-4 layers of these products, we can have a garden on the roof without any issues from water seeping into your house. There's idea of vertical gardening, where you could be using artificial soils like hydroton or lava rock or gravel or cocoa peat and all those kind of things, like rock wool. You could use those things to grow vegetables on vertical roofs. Then we can use bioflocks, where you're not exchanging any water, but you have a huge density of fish in the tanks on your rooftop. You could be, if you have some space, you could be using that space to incorporate goats in your living, because they are very important. There are foods that we cannot digest, like veggies, like green leaves. We can use them to convert that to edible form for us. We can use very small spaces to grow immense amount of these mushrooms in our cities, in our rooms, on our rooftops. And they literally, we have this problem in Lahore, because it's surrounded by huge fields in India and Pakistan. People have this excessive amount of agricultural waste that they end up burning. So we could use that waste and transform into mushroom and put it to a good use for us, have a healthier life, be self-sustaining with our food needs, and it will have an impact which will be greener cities. This part is very hot. 8-9 months, it's extremely hot. So it will cool off the place and will reduce people's spending on electricity and burning fossil fuels.
Have you been promoting this?
Yes, I have.
How have you been promoting it? I love the idea.
Well, I'm glad when people are fully aware of the impact these ideas have on our life, on our mindset. Then they would very quickly adopt them, but most of the people are not aware of these ideas yet. I have been promoting it in ways that right now I work with a solar installation company. Most of the other solar installation companies in my city focus most on bigger size packages that they have, because otherwise it's not profitable for them. But I have designed packages which can literally make a person off grid using the loopholes in the energy tariff that we have here, the annual consumption, what do you call it, graphs and everything. So with a very little amount of spending, as little as $300 up to $1,000, you could actually be living in an off-grid house in the city where you're not paying anything to the utility for your electricity bills. So that's very important over here, because let's suppose in US, if somebody is paying 12 cents or 13 cents for a kilowatt for 1 unit of electricity, that's maybe 1/100 of their hourly income. Yet in Pakistan, because it's an agriculture-based country, we do less trading with the rest of the world. We don't have foreign exchange as much. If we try to depend on that, it might end up taking 25, 30, 40% of a person's monthly income. So the money they would need to spend on their food and other things, they end up spending on energy. And that affects a lot of people, a lot of poor or mediocre families. So that's very important in my part of the world. I'm working on those. I try and share the information that I've gathered, my research. I also try to promote biodynamic farming, even in the villages or the open fields where agriculture is practiced. I try to promote a sustainable form of it, where we don't till the land, we don't plow it. It's just left the way it is. We use raised bed gardens, which uses much lesser amount of water, maybe 10% of what the traditional farming does. Creates this healthy ecosystem where we try and allow other plants to grow in the fields, and try to develop an ecosystem which is sustainable. People don't have to use pesticides. They don't have to use fertilizers, and eventually the farming becomes profitable for farmers. Otherwise, in my country and the adjacent country, India, which is bigger Punjab, where most of this farming is done, most of the farmers are in debt because the farming is not profitable. So I try to promote these ideas through some forums. If I meet people, I try to promote that as well.
And you've been working on this for how long?
Part of those years, I've been working on these for 7-8 years. Some of these years were more focused on actually figuring it out. So I tried to learn these technologies, these things in more detail, so I could eventually end up promoting and developing prototypes and ideas in practicable forms. So that's what I developed that for.
Wow. And when you went to school, we're just going back a tiny bit. What did you study in school?
We have this this curriculum, which is sort of based on your village, on your province. So the The curriculum includes normal maths, English. I'm really sorry, I'm running low on my battery now because earlier on I was on my phone. It was scheduled there, so I had to switch to laptop. So I guess
Do we
conversation.
do we have a few minutes left, or should we end now because of that?
I guess I will have a couple of minutes only.
Okay, answer the question quickly. You know what? I'm not going to take a chance of you getting lost. What would you like to leave our audience with? Hello? Oh, are you coming back or are you gone? Okay, I think he is gone. His laptop died. So, maybe we'll get to talk again to him. We shall see. But for now, it's been very nice speaking with him and finding out ways that we can bring a green, sustainable life to the cities and to the country and begin to survive in a more eco life. And having said that, I am going to end the broadcast for now. I may be back later, I'm not sure, but I will definitely be back. And I wish you all a good evening, and I will speak to you in the future. And with that, I am going to wave goodbye and see what happened to my guests, and have a great night. It's been nice speaking with you and being around you. Bye, everyone.